attacks on vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. US Central Command says its forces destroyed 2 Houthi anti-ship missiles aimed at the critical waterway that were prepared to launch. A White House National Security Council spokesperson says the ongoing strikes are taking away capability from the Iran-backed militants. But a Houthi spokesperson said the group will not stop going after vessels they believe are linked to Israel and called the attacks by the US and the UK a, quote, persistent act of aggression. The US president admitted Thursday that the Houthis remain undeterred. CNN's Scott McLean is following this live from Istanbul. Scott, great to see you. We miss you in London, of course. So if the Houthis remain undeterred by this, strategically, what is the point? Obviously, the Houthis have been attacked by Saudi Arabia on and off since 2015. They've proven their resilience. These US and UK strikes also feed into their narrative and their conception of the world and what they want to communicate. So what is the purpose? Is it purely so that the US and its allies can say, we will put our money where our mouth is? If we say we're going to retaliate, we do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Bianca, because there's no indication at this point that the strikes will stop on either side. The Pentagon said yesterday that, look, we never said that the strikes from the Houthis would stop immediately. And so it seems like this will continue on, because even though last week when the strikes began, a U.S. official figured that about 1/3 or so of the Houthis' offensive capabilities had been destroyed. And now there have been 5 rounds of American strikes, and they continue to come. There have been American-owned ships targeted for each of the last 3 days. On Tuesday and Wednesday, by the way, those ships were actually hit by Houthi missiles, though didn't cause enough damage to actually prevent them from continuing to sail. As you mentioned, the Houthis say none of this is going to deter them, and President Biden had a pretty interesting exchange at the White House yesterday. Listen.
Are the airstrikes in Yemen working? Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. They're going to continue, yes.
The Houthis, by the way, did make clear that ships that had no links to Israel or were not allied with the West were free to pass. In other words, Chinese, Russian ships, good to go.
Retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons is with me now. So these airstrikes, the U.S. has been hitting sites all in Yemen, different places where they say the Houthis are based. Are they working to stop them? President Biden said no. Will they continue? Yes. What's your reaction to that?
I think the president's being brutally honest, and that's a lot to do with the fact that our response has been in response to what they've done. And so it's not been escalated whatsoever. I think for us to restore any kind of deterrence to the air, we've got to go on an offensive campaign for the next 30 to 35 days, make it very crystal clear that we're going to take as much military capability away from the Houthis.
Well, how do you do that? Look, when we talk about has it stopped the Houthis, these are the attacks in November and December inside the Red Sea. You can see where the bottleneck is here. They have continues. How could you stop them from doing this?
So they have thousands of military weapons and capability, especially the anti-ship missiles. We're seeing them firing at tankers now. I mean, that is now, you're going to potentially create disasters within the Red Sea that'll last forever. 50 nations are being affected right now because of what's going on here. 2 things. Number one, you have to increase the level of attacks. They have to be constant, almost 24/7. Again, an air campaign, number one. And then number two, to continue what we were doing by cutting off their resupply. We lost 2 Navy SEALs last week in that mission that we've done that. We've done missions like that before also in the past, but we've got to cut off their capability to eventually resupply those military operations.
Again, if you look at Yemen here, you can see where the Houthis are in control over here. For them to be resupplied, it largely needs to be done by sea, by Iran.
That's right. It's all coming here from the Persian Gulf, and we've got naval forces in all these locations here. And if you do both of those things together, it might make an impact. But I still think it's going to take 30, 35, 40 days in order for this to happen. So we should check back here then. But again, overall, the increase of airstrikes in order, we call it a formal campaign. Make sure that we're telling the Houthis, we are not stopping until you stop.
You know, as someone who has served before, when you hear a leader say what we're doing isn't working, but we're going to keep doing it, If you were serving right now in the Red Sea, how would that make you feel?
Well, I think the commanders there are going back to the president and the Pentagon with different kinds of options, and likely one of those is to increase. This administration is kind of trying to thread the needle with regard to what their relationship is with Iran, and they're not trying to escalate. The bottom line is Yemen's a very poor country. It's not a good look for the United States and Great Britain to be bombing and creating the kind of chaos within this country that is one of the poorest in the entire Middle East. So I think they're trying to thread that needle to make sure that the strikes are precise and military related only.
Major Mike Lyons, great to have you. Thank you very much. Kate?
Hello and welcome guys, my another video. তো আমি যে টপিকটা নিয়ে আজকে আপনাদের সাথে শেয়ার করব সেটা হচ্ছে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং বিষয়ক একটা ভিডিও। এটা হচ্ছে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং একটা বিষয়ক একটা ভিডিও। আমি যদি একটু বাইরে আছি, আজকে একটা মাঠের ভেতরে আছি। সো ফ্রিল্যান্সিং যারা করতে চান, ফ্রিল্যান্সিং সেক্টরের অনেক ওয়ে আছে যেগুলোর মাধ্যমে আপনারা ভালো একটা আর্নিং জেনারেট করতে পারেন। সো সেক্ষেত্রে আপনাকে অবশ্যই অনেক স্ট্রাগল করতে হবে, সে বিষয়গুলো বুঝতে হবে। আর বিশেষ করে ফোনের মাধ্যমে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং করা কোনোভাবেই পসিবল না। ফ্রিল্যান্সিং করতে হলে অবশ্যই একটা ল্যাপটপ অথবা কম্পিউটারের প্রয়োজন হয়। এবং যারা হলো বিভিন্ন ওয়েতে ইউটিউবের মাধ্যমে এবং বিভিন্ন ওয়েতে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং বিষয়ে অনেক ভিডিও বানায়, এগুলো আসলে ফেক। তারা আসলে ভিউজের জন্য এই কাজটা করে। সো আমার ভিডিওটা ভালো লাগলে অবশ্যই শেয়ার করবেন, লাইক করবেন, কমেন্ট করবেন। এবং ফ্রিল্যান্সিং বিষয়ে টিপস ট্রিক্স সবই দেওয়া হবে এই চ্যানেলে। সো আপনারা চ্যানেলটাকে ফলো করবেন, তাহলে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং বিষয়ে সব ভালো ক্যাটাগরি সম্পর্কে জানতে পারবেন এবং ফুল টাইম সাপোর্ট পাবেন। তো ফ্রিল্যান্সিং শুরু করার প্রথম ওয়েটা হতে পারে আপনার হলো আপনি ডিজিটাল মার্কেটিং দিয়ে শুরু করতে পারেন। কারণ ডিজিটাল মার্কেটিং করলে আপনি হলো মানে ফ্রিল্যান্সিং বিষয়ের সব বিষয়ের উপর একটা ধারণা নিতে পারবেন। ফেসবুক, ইউটিউব, আদার্স সাইটগুলো সম্পর্কে ডিজিটাল মার্কেটিং থেকে আপনি ধারণা নিতে পারবেন। আপনি ইউটিউব প্ল্যাটফর্মে কাজ করতে পারেন এবং ইউটিউবের যে ক্যাটাগরিগুলো আছে, ইউটিউব একটা চ্যানেল গ্রো করতে হলে কি করা লাগে এবং চ্যানেলের হলো মনিটাইজ কীভাবে আনবেন, বেশি ভিউ কীভাবে পাবেন, এগুলো সম্পর্কে অবশ্যই আপনাকে জানতে হবে এবং বুঝতে হবে। না বুঝলে কিছুই করতে পারবেন না। সো এই বিষয়গুলো মোস্ট ইম্পর্টেন্ট, যে আপনাকে অবশ্যই অনেক স্ট্রাগল করতে হবে এবং একজন কন্টেন্ট ক্রিয়েটর হতে হলে অবশ্যই সেটার প্রতি একটা ধারণা নিতে হবে আপনাকে। সো আমি অবশ্য আজকে একটু বাইরে আছি, একটা মাঠের ভেতরে আছি এলাকারই। সো আজকে এই পর্যন্তই। নেক্সটে কোনো ভিডিওতে অবশ্যই দেখা হবে। চ্যানেলটাকে সাবস্ক্রাইব করে সাথেই থাকুন। ধন্যবাদ।